Hey there guys, I'm Russ. This is sailing vessel Tautog I'm standing on in the rain in Guatemala. I'm still in Rio Dulce. The rain is part of Tropical Storm Nadine, which is east of us over by Roatan. The center is on Roatan, going ashore today in Belize and then heading west across the Central America and heading out to the Pacific, where it may or may not get a new name. I don't know. But for what it means today is rain. And it's Saturday, and Saturday afternoon and Sunday are painting days because the boatyard workers are not making dust on Saturday afternoon and Sundays, and of course it's raining, so it means it's not really a painting day. So it means I'm collecting water, and it doesn't look like I'm doing anything, but I am. I've got all my buckets out right at this moment, and I'm collecting water, and I have gotten about 18 gallons already today in my tank, and I'm going to hopefully get another 18 before the day's over. If you can't paint, you might as well collect water. And I got some engine work done today. The engine is complete. All it needs is preventative maintenance now, the routine stuff. I changed the belt today, but it still looks a little loose because the belt had a pretty strong memory from the way it had been folded in my storage locker, so I know that I'll have to adjust the belt after I run the engine a few minutes. And I want to clean the seawater strainer, and I think that's a wrap on the engine. And fuel filters. I need to change fuel filters too, but I won't do that until I'm in the water because I need to run the engine for that, and I don't have cooling water. So, other than that, things going on. Primarily, it's the bottom of the boat, and I've got a lot of footage of that. We'll get into that in just a moment here. I've got some injuries. I really needed to take a couple days off because I've been hurting myself. Almost used a cuss word. My toe on my right foot, my big toe, has lost its toenail because of an injury. I mashed it twice in 2 days, and on the day 2, the toenail just ripped off, and my God, you could have heard the scream from Guatemala City. But let's get into it, okay? So we're going to talk about bottom stuff, bottom of the boat and blisters and stuff like that, and what you got to know. And again, this is not instructional because I'm just not qualified to teach, but what I've learned, is going to help me in the future. So let's get into it, all right? Look right here. So down the bottom, you can see some blisters I did work, but what do you think about that one? Are those blisters? Is that moisture trying to come out of a crack in the paint? Absolutely. So, and what about that little divot to the left? Probably another blister. So that we're going to have polyester repair here. This is going to be an epoxy repair, which is something that I would not have noticed myself. So I noticed that it had been blistering, but I would not have identified that I needed a different type of adhesion, because if you try to use polyester resin on top of epoxy, it will not adhere. But the reality is epoxy is used in a lot of places, and it's not the same. Generally, I've been taught that epoxy will adhere to polyester, but not the other way around. Any of you guys who are experts, feel free to chime in with your wisdom to educate the group. But now I'm told this is an example of mixing and matching. The guys tell me that they're scraping off a whole layer of epoxy to get down to the polyester hull. Look at this carnage. They've been scraping all day, and you can see that's not just paint coming off. That's a layer of fiberglass cloth which was embedded in apparently epoxy. So it was epoxy over top of the fiberglass, the polyester hull. So I had a discussion with the yard manager today, telling him that we are not going to try to increase the scope of my boat or to do this. I mean, you could begin tugging the string and end up with a project like this, $20,000 boat, and you can spend freaking $50,000 on repairs, and you got to stop short. So I guess my words of wisdom to any other boat owner is be able to control scope. You have to remember and keep your mind screwed on straight and remind yourself that this you know, the boat is not going to be a tomb for the pharaoh. The boat is not going to be going to the Smithsonian. It's not going to go into some, you know, antique museum where everything is pristine. This is a used boat. It's 45 years old, and we talked today about the blisters, because it's part of the boatyard scope is to do blisters, and Tristan was here asking, well, just how far do you want to go? Because you can see this is what it looks like when I'm done grinding for blisters, but these guys are pointing out you really need to scarf it back more, and since it's part of their scope, they are going to do that probably next week. This is a good example. I thought this was pretty darn good, but you can see it's just not quite ready yet. There's water seeping out or whatever this shit is. This is some kind of filler. That's the epoxy collection. That's the polyester fiberglass that the boat is made of. And it had a layer of some kind of filler followed by primers followed by paints. And so it's just gotten so thick that's probably why it's cracking. Because there's too many layers of shit on here. People go crazy with fillers, and I mean, how well do you need to fare the smoothness of a boat that can only go 5 knots? I mean, you gotta think about that kind of stuff. I mean, if you're making a spaceship that's taking off from Cape Canaveral, or if you're making an airplane that can go Mach 5, you need to have that baby smooth and aerodynamic. But if a boat has a little bit of ripples or a couple of divots here and there, it doesn't matter on a boat that only goes 5 knots, 6 knots. And all I can say is, oh my God, you don't want to go down that road. If you're going to live for 200 more years and you could do all the work yourself, you build a big tent around this thing, and that's what you do, strip it down as you need. But you just, you know, as I walk through this boatyard, I see, you know, different boats in different stages with different repairs going on. You know, steel boats are a different animal, but still the same type of questions have to be asked. I mean, this guy here has got his whole bow, the plating gone, you know, and he's been doing, I mean, that dude has been working pretty darn hard. He's outworking me, that's for sure, since I've been here. They're grinding and needle gunning and welding every damn day. All the dirty work above the waterline is pretty much done, ready for me to start painting. But you can't paint when this big catamaran over here is just generating huge clouds of dust. It's just been awful today. And so these guys decided to get to work on the bottom. And the scope that I'm paying for is to have them grind out and repair the blisters and do a light sanding on the hull to allow me to apply my bottom paint. And then I take over and start rolling out bottom paint. But one thing you'll notice is that they've ground back the holes, and I think a lot of that is because they heard that I was an officer in the military. And you know the joke, if an officer does it, you probably have to do it over. Well, they did have to, I identified the holes, but they decided to grind them back even further. And they have these dripping marks, but that's due to washing with acetone. So they're kind of just making themselves ready for, you know, mixing the polyester resin and patching this puppy up. So I'm glad I paid them to do it. Yeah. Well, I'm always happy to receive insights from other folks, and Brent is a friend of mine down here at Nanajuana, and he noticed that, you know, almost every one of the blisters is on the port side, and there's some damage on the bow, and he suggested that maybe I consider that this boat has actually been grounded sometime in the past. We do believe that the boat was in charter service for a number of years in the Caribbean, so you just never know. But possibly we're looking at physical damage more so than like a manufacturing defect. Yeah, this is pretty much ready for final cleaning and then the prop speed. But as you can see, there are some drips that get on there, and I didn't want anything to get on once I put the prop speed on, so I'm going to hold off on doing anything. I'll do a final cleaning when all the bottom painting is done. That'll be the last job I do, I think. I'm worried because prop speed has like a final coat of some kind of silicone stuff, and I don't know how that handles being out in the sun. If it was weeks and weeks, I'd rather not find out. So, ow, just hit. I was standing right here, and I was bending down picking something up, and I turned and boom, right into that. I don't know what it's going to look like. Hit that one pretty hard right in the bridge of the nose. In a boatyard environment. I mean, I've already got some laceration injuries, and I've got a gouge up on my knee, and I don't even remember what caused them, but I need to learn to be careful walking amongst all these things. But I do. I walk through there all the time. And if I tell people all the time, if you're naturally born clumsy, then you don't need to be owning a boat. So I guess I've got to step up my game. That one hurt. That's probably going to bruise up pretty good. Ugh. Oh, it gave me a shock. My head kind of hurt for a second there. The stripe is going to come up higher in the back of the boat where they have painted. I'm actually going to bring the stripe up above that to kind of raise the bottom paint border, just because this area was getting heavily covered with algae and stuff, and even getting barnacles above my water line, just because of splashing and stuff like that. So again, not a bitch, but I am going to do that. So I'll be taping that off probably tomorrow evening and painting on Friday. This is Wednesday, or possibly painting on the weekend. I'm probably getting grease all over the camera, but I can't see. So this is the hose that I took out, and it's very bright, so you can see the chewed up portion, and I don't know if you can see it well. I can't really see what the camera's seeing, but you can see that's the part that was getting slowly sawed to pieces, and it looks like it was an active leak. I don't see how that hose could not have been leaking. And I think I identified a second oil leak, so I'm going to go into town and get a new hose made. Then I'm going to get, and I'm also going to see if he has, or if any of the local hardwares have, the high temperature thread lubricant, you know, basically the equivalent of putting Teflon tape on my fittings. And I'm going to break all these fittings loose that I can get to, and all the ones that look like suspected leakers. And then we're going to put it all back together. But so it's not even, it's 9:30 in the morning, so I've got time. I'm going to have a drink, so I'm going to have. Because on this ship, the captain rewards the crew like they're puppies. And when we do a good job, then we get a reward. So I'm going to have a drink, and go some chocolate milk and add some rum to it. That tastes awesome. So now let's kind of. Okay, so I think we've identified the oil leak. These two fittings, I don't know what you call that kind of fitting, oil hose fitting. They connect to oil hoses like this. You know, this spins on to the other end, and but this end bolts into the engine, mounting itself, and the one of them was leaking for sure. I could see that obviously. So I'm gonna. You can see they have some kind of. It looks like JB weld. That probably was an attempted leak repair. So I'm going to bust that out of the threads and re-thread these in with a little bit of Permatex thread sealant. Crank them in as far as they will go. Then reattach the hoses again with more thread sealant, and then that should be that. I've got the new hose made. This is a new hose. And, the guy made that in front of my eyes, and I swear he did it for $6. Used the same fittings, I think, from my old hose. Yeah, so down here we're upside down. Can we see anything? See where these paper towels are? Yeah. So this one had the damaged hose, and this fitting is a leaker. This thing here is just, you're looking at the end of a little 1/4-inch hose, and I understand now what the situation is. I really believe I do. So, because over here, right there, that is the original oil pressure sender, I think, and there's a wire going to it which is not connected at the other end. So I'm going to determ that and throw the wire away because it's just confusing, and I'm going to abandon that oil pressure sender in place. But what I can see they did, though, somebody got clever and thought they found this fitting, they connected a 1/4-inch hose to it, and then they ran this hose to a manifold, which was then sent to a bunch of sensors, you know, for alarms and indication and all that. And in general, No, that's not too dissimilar to what you might find in a damn nuclear plant. I mean, um, but in this case, I'm certainly not going to go back and re-engineer back to original. First, I don't have the original Perkins oil sender. Fuck. Oh, shit. Oh my God, well, you should have heard the cuss words 20 minutes ago. I did successfully get the oil hose that, so the oil hose that was pinched by the, and I just came down from the top and took a quick shower using the community soap, which is kind of yucky, but I was pretty dirty and covered with grease and oil. I got the oil hoses changed, and honestly, I'm gonna just kind of take a break today. I mean, the engine's empty; it doesn't have any oil in it, so it's not like it's gonna leak today. You know, I'm not gonna try to start it because there's no cooling water, because the boat, of course, is dry. I'm thinking about a way by which I could do a test while I'm still in the hard, and I'm going to figure something out, because I think there's a lot of value for somehow coming up with another source of water to go into that little hole. That one there. That's the engine saltwater intake. If I get some kind of reducer, I could rig a garden hose up and just let it rip full blast. And then just so I can run the engine for 5 minutes, you'll put the oil in, put the filter back on, you'll run the engine, change fuel filters, prime it if needed, run it again. You'll kind of get all that just behind me. You'll call it discovery. Because those fittings on those hoses, I struggled with. And I don't think it's all because I'm a dumb shit. I think it's partly because one of the previous owners, I don't know whom, decided that they did not want the engine oil filter to be in the normal engine oil filter location. And they moved it to a remote location. Well, actually, to a different spot on the engine. But that required running a bunch of hoses, which is fine, except that they put the hoses on while the engine was still on a bench. I'm sure of that. Then they installed it into this boat. And it didn't fit the mountings right. And one of the hoses got pinched and almost chopped in half. And the other ones were very difficult to get aligned, because these hoses are pretty stiff. It was very difficult to get aligned in order to get the threaded fittings on. And one of them, the threads just got so tight so quickly, I'm kind of nervous about it, and I don't know. One thing you may not have thought about when the boat is in the boatyard is, what do you do with the dinghy? Normally I have the dinghy hanging from the davits at the back of my boat, and I have the plug removed so that water cannot collect in the dinghy. Otherwise it becomes so heavy it can actually break the ropes from the davits. So when a boat goes in the boatyard, there's only one real choice, and that is to either abandon the dinghy and leave it there in the boatyard with you, or put it in the water, which is what I've done. So my little orange and yellow dinghy has been floating in the river now for about 3 weeks, and it's getting that river algae scum on the bottom and on the engine, but it also fills up with rainwater because the plug is installed. So after every rain, this is what I have to go do. Oil filter store. This dude has got about every filter known to man. I need to come back and get a couple belts too. Well, the gentleman at the oil filter store told me that I might want to walk up to the top of the bridge to see the lancha race. Now, lancha just means launch, and a powerboat. All those boats out there you see are launch boats. They're basically like water taxis. And you see that there's a kayak race taking place, and what I didn't know was that later that day the launches themselves were going to have a race. So that's some of the exciting things that happen here in the Rio. Hey guys, well, thanks for watching the video. As always, I appreciate your comments and your questions. been kind of a rough couple of days for me. I've injured my toe like 2 days in a row, the way I said, and lost the toenail. I've got a wrap on my right wrist. I've got a cut on my left palm, and I don't even remember how I got that. You know, and I've got the sore back muscle. My left shoulder blade is still kind of tweaky, and it's difficult to sleep. So frankly, it has been a rough couple of days. But I'll be okay. I mean, overall, I still think I have excellent health, and I'm very grateful for that. So that'll close out this video, and I hope you all take care. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.